Hello, everyone. I hope that the beginning of this school year is going so well for you. I know there's a lot going on, new students and potentially a new classroom arrangement. Maybe you're a new teacher. But I'm also very well aware of how much of a difference you make for the students in your class and for the families that support them. So thank you for everything that you do. Each week, I'll be sending you a message just like this one that does a couple of different things. First of all, it hopefully provides you some study ideas or some messages that are meant just for you as a teacher, that help you to live the gospel of Jesus Christ, to feel empowered and excited and motivated for the upcoming week of seminary. Second, the message should give you some practical teaching ideas, whether it's a tip for applying that week's curriculum lesson, or some possible adaptations, or some other ideas that might be helpful for you. And third, it'll help you to lead. Being a seminary teacher means you're also a leader of youth, and there's a lot of responsibilities we have that go along with that. And so the email might point out to you some administrative assignments that you have, or some policy changes or announcements that come from the church generally. These messages will be posted on our homepage at silearn.churchofjesuschrist.org, and I'll also send them out weekly to you via email. Now, for this message, I want to share with you something that I found in my study of 2 Corinthians that just made me think of you. I don't know if you've noticed this as you've read, but Paul is essentially a seminary teacher. He's converted the gospel of Christ himself and now spends his days preparing for and teaching that gospel to his quote-unquote students. A lot of times he has to travel to do that, and then he builds these relationships with these communities that he reaches and writes letters to them. So 2 Corinthians is one of at least 4 different letters we know that Paul wrote to the Corinthians. We only have 2 of them. We know that he wrote 2 others, at least 2 others. But if you need more proof that he is a seminary teacher, you just read the beginning of 2 Corinthians, where he begins to describe the, verse 8, trouble, the pressing feelings he has, the feeling he has of sometimes doing a work that is above his strength, and even, he admits, a work that sometimes causes him despair unto life, at least the persecution he faces while in that work. A couple of years ago, I conducted a athletic experience with my students in class. I invited every student in class to stand up, to hold their arms out to the side, just like this, and then for 1 minute straight, flick their fingers as if they were flicking water off their fingers, like this. And I invited them to do it at just about a second, a flick a second cadence. Now, you could try this with your students. It's kind of fun. For about the first 15 seconds, they'll think it's really easy. Then for the next 15 seconds, they'll start to notice it's a little bit more difficult. It is very rare that a student will be able to keep up a regular cadence like this all the way through the end of the minute. Their arms get tired, they get heavy, their muscles start to burn, and inevitably, they will start to say or call out, "This is hard." And that phrase is one that I wanted to capture in that experience with my students. Because I think what Paul is describing at the beginning of 2 Corinthians is exactly that. My mission, my assignment, his as an apostle, but yours as a seminary teacher, is hard. Not that we don't love it, not that we don't recognize the incredible blessings that come from it, but it is difficult. Now, you, as you teach this week, might have a similar study with your students where you'll invite them to discuss what things are difficult for them as teenage members of the church and how the Lord has provided them comfort and strength. And if you want some teaching ideas there, just look down below on this message. But as I was reading this, I was thinking about you and thinking about how difficult it is to prepare to teach seminary every single day, to wake up at 5 o'clock or 4:30 so that you can be teaching seminary at 6 o'clock. To teach it to teenagers who are not very famous for being alert and attentive early in the morning, and to do it at a time when the rest of your entire ward is probably asleep. There are at least 3 reasons I found as I read 2 Corinthians for why it is hard. Why it's hard for our teenage students to be members of the church, why it's hard for us sometimes, and why it's hard for you maybe to be a seminary teacher at times. The first one This is in reverse order. But the first one is in verse 5. For as the sufferings of Christ abound in us, so our consolation also aboundeth by Christ. Paul teaches very clearly that when we suffer, Christ comforts. In fact, he calls him, at the end of verse 3, the God of all comfort. We don't experience that comfort unless we have something about which we need to be comforted. In other words, one of the reasons why I think sometimes the Lord allows difficulties into our lives, into our callings, is because when we struggle, we reach out to him for strength. We rely on the atonement of Jesus Christ and his strength to provide us peace and comfort. And without those struggles, we don't have as strong of a testimony of that experience. So you maybe wouldn't feel as much of the influence of the Spirit if it weren't, at least to some degree, a little bit difficult to teach seminary. The second reason, in verse 4, verse 3, blessed be God, even the Father of our Lord Jesus Christ, the Father of mercies and the God of all comfort, who comforteth us in our tribulation, that we may be able to comfort them which are in any trouble, by the comfort wherewith we ourselves are comforted of God. Second reason why Paul teaches the Lord allows things to be difficult is because it allows us, once we have been comforted, to be able to comfort others. You know this maybe already about teenagers, but they are exceptionally good at detecting hypocrisy. They know when the person talking to them doesn't believe or doesn't live what they're saying. Now, this is not a call for us to be perfect in order to teach a perfect gospel, but it is a call for us to be vulnerable and to allow our own life experiences and the testimonies that we have to be a regular part of class. In other words, if we want to help students who are having a difficult time, sometimes it's important for us to talk to students about our difficult times. If students have questions, they need to know that their seminary teacher has had questions. If students have days when they're tired or days when living the commandments strains them above strength, they need to know that their seminary teacher has had those same experiences. And then when you bear testimony to them of the comfort that you've received, it will be all the more powerful to them. Reason number 3 that I found, this one actually comes 2 chapters later. In chapter 3, verse 3, Paul says this, verse 2 and verse 3, you are our epistle, written in our hearts, known and read of all men. For as much as you are manifestly declared to be the epistle of Christ, ministered by us, written not with ink, but with the Spirit of the living God, not in tables of stone, but in fleshy tables of the heart. The third reason Paul teaches why difficulties are allowed is because when we go through those difficulties with their accompanying comfort from God, the gospel becomes not just something we talk about or teach, it becomes something ingrained in the fleshy tables of our hearts. It is one thing to teach seminary. It is another thing to become a teacher of the gospel of Jesus Christ. This experience that you're going to have this year will be both. You will have experiences preparing and teaching seminary. But part of this process, part of the reason the Lord calls us to teach, isn't just so that we can benefit our students. It's also so that we ourselves can become more deeply converted to the gospel of Jesus Christ, so that the gospel becomes a part of our very nature. As President Eyring said years ago, so that we become natural disciples of Christ, where what he did becomes what we do. Brothers and sisters, I am so grateful for all that you do. I know your students are grateful for all that you do. And even when it gets hard, I hope that you can look at scriptures like this and reflect on experiences that you've had and have the confirming testimony of the Spirit that you are doing God's work and that he comforts you and is strengthening and helping you to grow. I know that has been very true for me. The beginning of the school year is a busy one for all of us. Has been in our family and has been for me personally. It's been difficult, but I have felt comfort, I have felt direction, and I felt miracles come to me. So thank you again for all that you do. God bless you this week, and we'll talk to you next week.